by Remax Dismond Realty.
It is my favorite time of the week, the time when we welcome Gina and Liz from Remax Dismond Realty Guam here. And ladies, we are going to talk about something wonderful today for about the next 7.5 minutes. We're going to talk about extensions. Now here on Guam, everybody always says, like it's somewhat of a thing of local pride. Everyone says, hey Boyd, do you have an outside kitchen? And that's a thing of pride, but then also it adds value to your property, yes?
It can add value, and it could also take away from the value depending on how you do it. So that's why it's important to know what you're doing, and if you're going to do the extensions, you really should be talking to somebody so you know what the laws are, so you can work within the law. Because anytime you do an extension and you're not conforming to the Government of Guam building codes and the setback laws, you're actually diminishing your value.
Okay, let's talk about it. Let's start at the beginning. If I own my own property and I've built a house and say like I've got like ample square footage around the property and I've got space too, how do I know if I'm able to build outwards, first of all?
The government requirements, like from your back portion of your structure, you're supposed to have 10 feet from that to your boundary point, and then 8 feet from the two sides of your structure, and then 15 feet from the front side. So if you're doing any renovation, and let's say you're 15 feet away from the back side, you need to make sure that you're within the 10 feet boundary, the 10 feet of your boundary point. Otherwise, if you build and extend into it, what's going to happen is in the future, you can't sell it until you correct the deficiency, which means you may have to demolish that section of the house or try to see if a variance, you're able to get a variance, which would deem your property as illegal non-conforming, or legal non-conforming, I mean, in terms of trying to sell it or liquidate your property.
Interesting. Now, Gina, what's the difference between me saying, like, if I have a concrete home and I was actually going to build like a concrete extension of my house, as opposed to say like I was going to build like wood and tin, or just like I was going to hang maybe like an awning or something like that, and then just like rent out that room? What is actually considered expansion of my property?
I would say if you're looking at expansion, then the concrete, obviously, because that's a permanent structure. And then you mentioned that you might, the thought here is that you're going to do the expansion and possibly rent it out. The thing to keep in mind is, if let's say you're adding a 1-bedroom onto an existing building, you have to know what your zoning regulation is. So there's building code regulation, and then there's zoning regulation. We've been finding a lot of properties where they're in a residential, it's called R1 zone. So R1 zone says you can have a single family home on that property. Regardless of how big the property is, R1 zone means you can only have one unit. So let's say I decided that I'm on an R1 zone, and I decided to build a 1-bedroom structure attached to my home because I've got ample land around me. So I know I'm within that setback.
Or your family expands, or what have you.
Yeah, or whatever. But in particular, if I did it for the purpose of renting it out, and I'm in an R1 zone, I now have an illegal duplex. Because if I have a 1-bedroom attached to my main home, but I'm in an R1, that's really considered an illegal use. Because the zoning law says you can only have one home. Even if I have an acre, if I'm on R1, I only have one home. I can only have one home. So there's ways you could do it legally. So the more you know about the zoning law, and the more you know about building codes and how they're applicable to your property, the more you can really do these extensions and enhance the value instead of hurting yourself later. Because like Liz said earlier, if you do this extension and you find out it's illegal later, sometimes your only alternative is to tear it down.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. What are the penalties if someone gets found to have an illegal structure?
Well, let's say you have an illegal structure and you're trying to get a business license. The government will not give you a business license to rent that structure. So there were situations where there was a period of time, I think 1992 to
about
1996, where the law, the section regarding the setback, was not in place. So anything built during that period, they could go into the government and request for a variance because their extension was done during that window of time. And if it was done during that window of time, they would allow for it. However, any time outside that period would be considered a violation. So, I mean, these are things that are critical so that, for example, like the other day I was talking to someone and they're going to be building a home and they want it to build, had a gorgeous view, they want it to build a 2-bedroom structure. So they're having 2 closets, walk-in closets. So I said, you might want to think about making sure that for future, if they want to sell it, that they could convert that huge closet into a bedroom and give it thought as they design it, because what is the objective? Is to maximize the value of your home so that in the event you want to sell it, you can configure it to meet and get higher value in terms of an appraisal.
Okay. Now, of course, within the context of this discussion, we've been talking about extra bedrooms so far. How about does the value of my home change if I build, say, an extra bathroom or a garage? If I expand that, what's the difference there?
Yeah, absolutely. Those types of improvements do add value. Yeah.
Much different than if I was to build a bedroom? Okay, based on the intent, I guess.
Yes, it adds value. So that if you had a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, your square footage has a factor, and the number of bedrooms do have factors. Now, bear in mind, a bedroom needs to have a closet to be considered a bedroom. So if you have just an open room with no closet, they will not count that as a bedroom.
That has less value than it could even be a
just
really
the presence of a closet. That's what does it.
It makes a difference.
Then it's a bedroom, and that has more value than just a room.
Interesting. So, like, if I had a sink and a toilet, it wouldn't matter. If I put a closet in there as well, then technically it's a bedroom.
Yeah, if they had a closet in there, it's a bedroom.
That is fascinating. Okay. So, and now, as insofar as this discussion, we've been talking about building outward. Is there any difference if I was going to add a second floor to my house and if I was going to build up as opposed to out?
I think if you go up, of course, your expense on constructing will be higher because your construction cost will be a little more having to go upward. But if your lot size is small, what other choice do you have other to expand upwards versus sideways? And then keeping in mind your setback. So if you've already maxed out your setback, best thing to do is go upward. So again, same thing is applicable. Your square footage makes a difference for your value and the number of bedrooms. And of course your features, your finishing is always critical. If you put a granite countertop versus a wooden laminate, your granite countertop will give you more value. Yeah.
Well, it worked for folks like in Manhattan and Chicago way back, and it works for folks right over there more locally in Legal and Terrace. Some folks, if you don't have enough space, you just build up.
That's correct.
Go skyward.
As long as you're doing it legally and you're adding to your square footage, you really are adding value.
Okay, so we have literally just scratched the surface of this topic, my friends. And where can people contact you once more? Because certainly there's going to be people with more questions.
Well, they can reach me at 687-0911 or Gina at 687-8885.
And your phones are absolutely going to blow up with people with questions, and we hope that they do.
And hey,
don't give the bill to us, though.
Well, we're really happy to help our local community, and if they have any questions at all, it's free.
All right, no doubt there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, stay tuned, everybody. That is fascinating news. Make sure you use it. Amplify the value of your home. And stay tuned. We're back after this.